Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Kurt Leavins. Welcome, Kurt.
Hey, Dave. How are you this evening?
I am fantastic, Kurt. I'm over my 72-hour fast.
Back to burgers, huh?
Pizza and lasagna and yogurt. Yeah. Anyway, it was an interesting experience. It wasn't that hard, actually. So I highly recommend it. All right, Kurt. The Oilers 4-1 victors over the Chicago Blackhawks. The the grade A shots in the game were 23-14 for the Oilers, with the subset of 5-alarm shots, more dangerous 5-alarm shots, 11-9 for the Oilers. So both goalies had a lot of really tough shots in this game, Kurt. Let's get after it. 2 good things, 2 bad things, and 2 numbers. What's your good thing?
My good thing is Connor Ingram. I said to you before you pressed record on the podcast tonight that this game had no business being as close as it was. One of the reasons it was close was Connor Ingram was really, really good. In fact, I'd submit that was his best game as an Edmonton Oiler. I don't know how you feel. Had the shutout broken up late by frankly, there was some ragged play in front of him, and he allowed a rebound on it as well. But nonetheless, he stopped 29 of 30, and quite frankly, over the first 2 periods, while the Oilers were dominating offensively, they persisted in making sloppy defensive errors. And Ingram was there time and time again to mop them up. In fact, it started on the very first shift where I don't know what the 5 skaters on the ice were doing after the puck dropped. Maybe they were nervous because all the dads were up in the stands, but a few of those dads would have been happy with how their son started that one out, because I think all 5 players made poor decisions on that play, and Ingram had to make 2 saves, 2 urgent saves, one big one off Mikheyev in the first period. And unfortunately, Dave, that was a sign of things to come. Ingram had to kind of be on his toes all night, because while the Oilers would dominate for a while at one end, then inevitably the Oilers would cough one up and he'd have to make another save at the other end as well. Later in the game, made 2 really solid saves when the Hawks got a power play. Big reason why the score stayed the way it was after that man advantage. Ty Emberson just fell down in his own zone in the 3rd period. That created a big chance. Ingram mopped that one up as well. I mentioned the shutout was broken up late, but he stopped 29 of 30, was named the game's first star. After all the trials and tribulations this guy has been through, to be in a stadium like Chicago, to be named the first star and to have your dad in the stands, I would imagine, can't put myself in his head, but I imagine would mean a lot to this young man. And it means a lot to the organization as well, because it seemingly every time he walks into the net, with very rare exceptions, he proves Stan Bowman a very wise man indeed by going out and taking a chance on him and acquiring him.
Yeah, you said the players might be nervous and the dads might not have liked that play. That's why the players were nervous, because they know they're probably highly judgmental.
See, it's funny. I was never nervous when my dad was in the stands, but everybody's different, right? So,
yeah. I was gonna. Did you call it when you said Connor Ingram's shutout? I heard you say a shut up. That would be a good firm. That would be a good way to refer to it, as a shut up. Really shuts the other team up when they get shut out. I think you did say shut out though. Kurt, my good thing was the 2. Listen, Chris Knobloch entered the season looking for a big, heavy line. He talked about he wanted to find a big, heavy line to play.
Yep.
He may have found kind of 2 of them, Kurt. They're not necessarily the biggest or the heaviest lines, but they're big enough and they're heavy enough. And I'm talking about the 2nd and the 4th line. that we saw, second and fourth lines that we saw playing tonight. I in the first period, I loved that, and this is the second first period in a row that where the Draisaitl line has come out like this. Those guys, they are big, fast, and brutal down low. And you know how McDavid and when he's out there with Ekholm and Bouchard and Hyman and Nuge, they tend to cycle the puck near the blue line.
Yep.
They make lots of plays. They're whipping around up top there. That's one thing. But if you can get that going down low, the Oilers haven't had a line, I don't think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt. Maybe you can, in the McDavid Draisaitl era, that cycles the puck down low, like consistently. And this line can do that. And they're starting to develop chemistry doing that, working intricate plays down low, cycling the puck, getting shots on net. In the first period, they had a number of chances. I mean, Podkolzin ripped a one-timer on net in the first, a beautiful shot. I don't think they counted it as a shot. Like, I don't know this is one of these weird shot places where they count a lot of tip shots that make, like, are phantom tips for the home team.
All the stats were a little bit weird tonight.
And the
in-rink stats, I should say.
Yeah, and they don't count, some obvious shots like Podkolzin's one-timer right on net. Kapanen had a really great chance, two really good chances in the first period coming in, passes from Draisaitl both times. Podkolzin's one came off a pass from Kapanen. They just, when they get going, that would be brutal to have to defend against. And I hope they're all, like, I haven't had a lot of faith in Kasperi Kapanen as a player. When he came here in the regular season, he was plagued by neutral zone turnovers and kind of bonehead defensive plays, not protecting the puck in the neutral zone, that kind of thing. But in the playoffs, he was really good. So I didn't know what was the real Kapanen, and I was glad they signed him and they got him on a good deal. But he is ripping it up on this line. And they were at fault on the goal against. There was a tough play for Kapanen at the blue line. Nurse poked it ahead. It went to Kapanen and a Blackhawk, and they fought for it. And Kapanen kind of hit it, and it went right to the guy in the Blackhawk guy in the slot.
Kind of unlucky.
It was a very unlucky play.
Yeah.
But I think these guys have got something going on, Kurt. And I'm super encouraged by this because Draisaitl's never been on a line like this. When he was on the dynamite line with Nugent Hopkins and Yamamoto, they worked intricate passing plays, but never with the brutality and the force that this group does. And it probably wasn't translatable to the playoffs, what those three players were doing, whereas this could really be huge in the playoffs. So we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. Like that was, I just found that, like, in terms of being an Oiler fan and things that really pick me up and get me going, that really got me going. And
yeah, you know what?
Go ahead.
Yeah, offense down low and cycling in the playoffs can win or lose a series, right? It's extended shifts in the other guy's zone. I buy your argument that Leon has probably never consistently been on a line like that. I do remember that for a while, he and Evander Kane were on the same line, and they were a handful together, a real handful down low. But consistent, they weren't together consistently for that long. So that's the only recent example I can think of that where it even approaches what you're talking about, because I see the same thing out of those three. So.
And Kane and Draisaitl never really developed chemistry.
No.
Because Kane would make a lot of hope passes and shoot a lot. And like, he wasn't as, like, Kapanen and Podkolzin they really look for Draisaitl and they put his game first. But now they're also making plays themselves. Like, they're really figuring it out. So.
Well, all three are fast, all three are heavy, all three can shoot. They're not prototypical second-line wingers, neither one of them. But with a guy like Draisaitl, it might work, right? Hey, I'm glad you brought up the fourth line, because I think this is the second game in a row where these guys have been, like, excellent. Not just good, but excellent. In fact, I graded Curtis Lazar a 7 tonight. I mean, thought he was really good. He was 80% on draws. He had a 5 5-on-5, 63% CF. That whole line had really good possession numbers, and a lot of it, to your point, Dave, came from hard work and cycling in the Chicago zone.
So I've been a skeptic about Frederick, about
Yep.
his ability to recover this year, because I mean he's the numbers show that his skating has slowed down, and I haven't seen it, had not seen any signal that it's getting better. Now, of course, it could if it is injury related to that high ankle sprain. But his slow times, he had these slow times in Boston before that, so that made me skeptical. It made me think it was something else. But that was easily Frederick's best game of the year.
I agree.
He looked like a player that you'd want to have for a few years,
Mm-hmm.
which was great. And Lazar, he's coming on, and he's starting to win me over as a fourth line center. He got a couple of really great shots on net. Janmark is having a renaissance season. He is coming back. Like he was a pretty weak player last year in the regular season, especially, quite frankly. And but he's coming on and playing solid hockey. And again, these are all guys over 200 pounds. They're not. This isn't that heavy a line. Although Frederick's Frederick's about 220, I think.
Yes, yeah, 221, I think.
It's heavy enough. And again, it starts to feel like this is a line you could count on in the playoffs. This is a line if they got chemistry and they really got going, they could make a difference in the playoffs. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what we're all looking for, right? Like we've seen now two teams that went on playoff runs, and you know what it needs from the different lines to come together. And I'm starting to get that vibe from every single line that the Oilers played, certainly tonight, except for the third line, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing about that fourth line is all three of them are smart defensive players, who consistently make the right choices on the ice. All three can also take a face-off, even though the only guy who's a natural center on there is Lazar. So they're the kind of line who you can put out there to protect the lead. You can put them out on the ice in your own zone late in the game and expect them to do the right thing. So yeah, it's these last two games of that fourth line have been encouraging, for sure. You need to be a heavier team to have a chance in the playoffs, and I still think that they could use one more big guy up the middle on their forward ranks, but it's starting to get there.
I can't, I'll agree with you on Janmark and Lazar being smart defensive players. I can't yet agree on Frederick. And again, I don't know if it's agility and speed, but
but Dave, there's
a
a difference between execution and smarts. I'll argue right now that he's a smart defensive player who hasn't been able to get the pucks. I've seen very little that suggests he's not a smart defensive player. His issue has been speed. You identify that, and I agree with it. But I saw enough of Trent Frederick when he played for Boston to know in a team where they demanded you play smart defense, that he knows how to play smart defense. So I just think there's a subtle difference between the two.
Kurt, what is your bad thing a money though?
I kind of went back and forth with this because I was going to bitch and complain about the Zach Hyman goal being waved off, but instead I'm gonna
That'd be a good one,
right? Like
that stunk.
How do you kick it in with your upper thigh? Like,
Yeah.
Give me a break, NHL. But I digress. I'll talk about the pizzas that were being slung in the Edmonton Oilers end tonight, and I kind of referred to them vaguely when I was talking about Connor Ingram as my good thing, but there was the early pizza that I kind of attributed to all five guys on the ice. But you know what? Both Nurse and then Regula had turnovers in the early goings as well. Regula's was particularly egregious. The Nurse one, he wasn't the only one at fault in that play, but Regula just, here you are, where's my tip? And then I mentioned the Emberson, fall late in the third period that turned into an opportunity as well. This is a Chicago Blackhawks team that's missing its two best defensive players.
Yeah.
Kind of like last night when I said, you're playing a team in LA that's 30th in goals. Well, tonight you're playing a Chicago team that's not a playoff team, that's missing their two best players, and you're still having trouble defending. Like that's concerning, right? I'm
Yeah, that
okay
is.
if you have trouble defending against one of the best defensive teams in the league, right? But when you're defending against a couple of the worst teams in the league, you know,
Not
I,
good.
I there's it's not good. There's some work that needs to be done and maybe some personnel changes yet.
Yeah, one of them, Kurt, I think, is a third line center who can defend. And um,
Yep,
it can't be Henrique. He can't be on the third line. But the I like Jack Roslovic is a gifted offensive hockey player.
agreed.
And he made some really nice plays today. I think he was in on 4 grade A shots, but he also leaked four grade A shots against.
Yep.
Like nothing egregious. He was just part of the turmoil
Mhm.
that was on the ice when he was out there.
I graded him a 6 and not higher for that very reason, Dave. So I saw what you saw.
Yeah, I just he's not a center, so I don't even want to blame him too much for the mistakes he makes,
Yep.
because he is miscast as a center. He's never going to be. He's not big enough. He doesn't have the mindset. He's not conscientious enough. He is not a defensive center. He is an okay-ish, barely acceptable defensive winger and a great attacker on a third line or a second line, but he's miscast. Mangiapane, he looked rusty. He like I was hoping he'd show some spark in the game. I didn't see anything, so he was struggling too. They might have trouble moving him if he doesn't pick up his game. I can see why they played him tonight. They got to get him in some games because NHL scouts want to see him. I
Yeah.
think.
And his
So
dad's in the rink. It would have been
well, there's that
beyond
too.
beyond bad style to not put him in one of these two games.
Yeah, and I think Howard will get on the next. But I thought Savoy was good on that line, and Roslovic was great on the attack.
Mhm.
But it's just little things down by the net. He just loses battles. He's out of his position. He's just not ready. He's not going to be. He's not. He's like 28, isn't he? 29. He's been in the NHL quite a while now, and
Yeah, he's a middle six winger. Enjoy him,
yes,
right?
exactly.
That's who he is, right?
So
Yeah.
if it was the playoffs right now, I think the move would be to move Roslovic to the McDavid line and Nuge at center on the third line. And Nuge would have to make that. It's a sacrifice for McDavid and Hyman. They wouldn't want to see that.
Yeah.
But that tactically, you couldn't have that that third line will get caved in the playoffs. It's not on. So for me, Kurt, the trade needs are a third line center who can defend, and keep up on the attack.
Yeah, and a bottom pairing D man
And a bottom pairing D man
who
who
can
can
defend, break up the cycle, kill
move the puck
penalties.
out. Yeah,
Yeah,
like a veteran, some
yeah,
kind of veteran guy, and I'm not sure who that is. But I don't watch the other teams closely enough to make any recommendations, or even when a trade is made to judge the trade. Like I just don't watch those players closely enough. So, but those are the two needs on the team right now, and it's pretty obvious. It's interesting the goaltending. You know, Ingram has shown enough, and Pickard has been actually before tonight's game since the Skinner trade. Pickard's been the better of the two goalies in terms of save percentage. So they have two guys who are playing pretty good, but the guy they're counting on, Tristan Jarry, is coming back, and the kid on the farm, Connor Unger, is just killing it. He got a shutout in his last game. He's got a 9 in 5 games. He's won all 5. He's got a 953 save percentage. That is really, really encouraging. So
yeah. I heard a stat today that Calvin Pickard, since the trade for Tristan Jarry, is top 15 in the NHL in save percentage off high danger scoring chances. It's like he's been by and large has been excellent since the trade. I think we know what Calvin Pickard is, and my point all along is that because you don't know how reliable either Jarry or Ingram can be, you have to make sure that you hang on to Pickard in case something happens to the other two guys. I don't argue that the other two guys are better NHL goaltenders, but they are unreliable enough, um, their play aside, that you need to have these three guys in your organization. I am positive that they will carry three goaltenders for a short period of time. But then I think that Ingram will go down while he still doesn't have to clear waivers.
He's got 3 games more that he can play.
Yeah, and then why not leave him there over the Olympic break so he can stay sharp, right?
Yeah, not a bad idea at all, Kurt.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's open to that. I think that's probably what will happen too. I think that you've convinced me on that, and I think that's the likely course of action. Although a game like tonight, there's a good battle. Let's put it that way.
Nice problem to have, right?
Finally.
Yeah.
What's your number, Kurt?
10. Connor McDavid's first assist tonight was his 50th of the season. That's 10 consecutive seasons that he has had 50 assists for the Edmonton Oilers.
Wow.
No other Edmonton Oiler has ever done that.
30 goals, 50 assists, 80 points in 46 games. Not bad.
Yeah, it's Wayne, of course, only had 50 assists 9 times because he only played here 9 years.
Too bad about that.
Yes, indeed.
Too bad about that one, Kurt.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad Peter Pocklington hadn't been a better businessman and didn't need to sell off his players.
Yeah. We could relitigate all that all over again.
To give him credit, they won 5 Stanley Cups when he was owner. So thanks to Peter Pocklington for that. And he brought Wayne Gretzky to Edmonton. So there was some really good stuff with the bad stuff.
Well, you know what? Let me close our brief Pocklington chapter with this. If Mr. Gretzky has forgiven Mr. Pocklington after all these years, and he has, then I suppose we all should.
Yeah. No, Gretzky was okay with what happened in the end. Okay. My numbers are 9-0 and 7-0. Evan Bouchard at even strength chipped in on 9 grade A shots, not one mistake on a grade A shot against. That's astonishing for a defenseman.
Mm-hmm.
Trent Frederick, the much maligned Trent Frederick, with me doing much of the maligning. 7 major contributions to grade A shots, not one mistake on a grade A shot against. It was Trent Frederick's best game of the year. It was one of Evan Bouchard's best games of the year. Evan Bouchard now has 46 points in 46 games. Not good enough to make the Canadian Olympic team.
Don't want to take someone like that.
Don't want to have him on the team.
What would that accomplish?
Yeah, when you can have a guy, and let's not get into it.
Bouchard graded a 9 tonight, along with Ingram, by the way, and I graded Frederick a 7. So.
Oh yeah, I would have given him an 8. Frederick was. I thought he played a great game.
He did. The way I look at games in grade games, and I'm sure you and Bruce were always a little bit different. Defense and chances are one thing, but actually putting up points is another. And for you to get into the upper echelon of game grades with me, unless you're a goaltender, you have to put something up on the scoreboard.
You want to see, and that's part of the fun of it. Like Bruce and I and you, we all have a slightly different thing. I'm really about the process.
I know you are.
And although I do, if someone makes it, actually scores, I also take that into account.
Yeah.
All right.
I tend to like looking at little details in the neutral zone, which don't always play directly into your grade A scoring chances statistics. That's why you and I are subtly different there. I also like looking at end results, which is why goals and assists are big for me in the game grades. So.
Alrighty, Kurt. Let's talk about, we've run the program. Let's talk about the Quinn Hudson signing, 2-year deal at $885. And I was looking on the internet after this happened on Twitter X, and there was not one negative comment that I could see about that contract. Everybody was thrilled that I could see about the
How
Oilers.
could you not?
Yeah, it's like the 2 years, not unexpected, but the salary is very it's a player announcing to the world, I am going to do everything I can to make the NHL, including taking a low salary to make it more salary cap friendly. So if there's any question about that, they'll pick me. I think it's a brilliant decision by Quinn Hudson. He's made the calculation. He's good enough to make the top 6 of the Edmonton Oilers. I think he's probably right. And his next contract, this was all about that next contract, where after a year or two playing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, he gets the big payday. Great thinking by him and his agent, and for the Oilers in the short term, excellent as well.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on that. One, when you look at how the contract is structured, he'll more or less be paid like an NHLer, even if he's in the AHL.
Yeah,
which is
Oilers do
really
that a lot.
Yeah, and it's really smart, especially if it's someone that you forecast to be on your NHL team. And it's a real incentive for the player as well. Like, I'm not stuck down here making $85,000 a year. It's so
he gets $400,000, doesn't he, if he plays in the AHL next year?
Yes, next year after this contract is done.
Yeah.
The bigger news here, though, to me, is this is what Ken Holland failed to do with Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, for that matter. But really, this is a lesson that this organization learned because of Philip Broberg. They did not rush into bridging that player. They felt, no, he's under team control. We can wait. We're not worried about an offer sheet. Well, Mr. Holland was wrong, and by the time the new organization took hold of that file, it was too late. The player had already soured, and he more or less invited the offer sheet. By doing this with Hudson, what you're doing is you're heading off that possibility at the pass. From what I understand, and I don't know him personally, but from what I understand, there's a very strong relationship between Hudson, his family, and his agent, and Stan Bowman. This goes back years to when Stan was in Chicago.
Okay.
So he has not only cultivated that relationship, but I think that Bowman has learned from this organization's past mistake, of which I thought unfairly had to wear, and I've written about this, that I just think it's off base to blame Stan Bowman on the Philip Broberg file.
It's Holland and Jackson.
Yeah, if you want to blame him on the Holloway thing, does he get a share of that? Yeah, okay, I can buy that. But on the Broberg thing, the damage was done, man. And so when you have a real general manager who really does care about development of prospects, Mr. Holland was a real general manager, but I think we can all agree his Achilles heel, his weakness was development. The whole organization was weak at it. Well, that page has turned. Look at the Bakersfield Condors these days. So Ham will get down off my soapbox now, but yes, a great deal for the club, great deal for the player, but it's also a sign that you now have a guy running this team who understands what's going on and gets ahead of business.
Well, it's funny because remember Holland, the Detroit farm system was the overripe thing. That was like the model for the whole NHL for a while. So he had a number of scouts who did extremely well from about 1990, the year 1990 to the year 2005. And then those scouts dried up. They stopped producing draft picks anymore.
Till 2005. Oh, 2005. Gosh, sorry. Yeah. I had 25 in my head. Okay.
2005. And then they stopped getting it right. And Tyler Wright might have been part of the issue.
He was.
Who became his head scout. And
so was Archie Henderson.
So the Oilers, you have whatever system is in place. And this is the toughest system of all to develop a dominant team in the NHL. Most NHL, there's more parity than ever before. The teams are tighter than ever before. There's more teams than ever before. Yep. Florida's accomplishment of winning 2 Stanley Cups in a row, like that is astonishing.
Yes.
And they did it with some salary cap trickery. Last year, can't remember the year before, but that those were the rules. They took advantage of the rules. I do not blame them in the least. They did what they had to do. The Oilers were positioned to do the same thing last year. one of the ways you can win is in this system, is by paying AHL players more. Identifying college free agents and figuring out a way to get them more money while they're in the AHL. And this is what he's just done with Hudson. Stan Bowman has done. You've got to work the system in every way you can. And there also seems to be, there always has been, but if you really work it with European players who are between the ages of 21 and 23, let's say, and who are either undrafted or they failed in their first attempt to make the NHL, but have become promising players in the European leagues. That seems to be another area where you can find some gems, because Stan Bowman has transformed the AHL team from a team that had almost no prospects to one that's got 5 or 6.
Yep.
They've got Connor Clattenburg, who they drafted, who's a fourth line aggressor and may make the team eventually. There's Isaac Howard, who they traded for. There's Viljami Marjala, a 22-year-old Finn who was killing it in the Finnish league after failing in his first attempt to make the NHL. There's Quinn Hudson, who they convinced to come here, who was, a fairly prominent free agent out of college. There's Josh Szymanski, signed out of Germany. There's Robbie Yarventi, who they traded for. And there's Connor Unger, who Ken Holland signed, the goalie that's playing so well. Bo Akey is playing well right now, and Atro Leppinen on defense is playing well.
Yep.
So there's a lot
Janssen down on the ECHL was just announced to the ECHL All-Star team as well. So there's another goaltender that's percolating. So
Samuel Janssen and Nathaniel Day are both interesting goaltenders, just starting out first year North American pros. So Stan Bowman, you've got to know all the players in the world. You've got to have an assessment of them and knowledge of them, and you've got to figure out ways to bring as many of them to your team and keep them as you can. And the Broberg and Holloway thing was a colossal foobar mistake. Like, it was just awful. The recovery from it has been pretty excellent in terms of bringing in young talent. And I have to get, Bowman gets credit for that. So hopefully it'll keep paying off, Kurt.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Hudson still has to make the NHL, so that's no guarantee. But both sides have certainly put the mechanism in place to put him in a place where he has a chance to succeed.
Yeah, the way these guys are scoring down there, between Howard, Marjala, Hudson, and Savoy, they've got 4 smaller forwards who are all great. Savoy was a great AHL player last year, a good to great AHL player, and these other 3 guys are great players in the AHL level this year. So if even one of them makes the top 6, they've hit a home run. Yeah. That's all they need, is one of these guys really to step up and make the top 6. And between them, I think that's a really solid bet. And then if another one makes it on the third line,
ding,
then
ding,
you're
ding.
just laughing.
Yeah.
If you get one, let's say 30 goals, 30 assists guys at the NHL, and one 20-20 guy, like, that would be the best case scenario.
Like a middle 6 guy, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's possible that might happen, but even if they just get one 20-20 guy, like an even strength player who gets 20 goals and 20 assists, and I think that will happen from this group of 4 players. They'll get at least one guy like that. That's huge for the Oilers to come out of nothing, especially after losing Holloway. So,
one footnote off that, sounds like Connor Clattenburg is going to need surgery. And if that's the case, he'll probably be out 6+ weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if he got hurt in the fight or in the hit before the fight, but
I'm not clear on which it was either. So
there was he got in a dust up. So he's got to stay healthy. You got to figure out how to stay healthy. And maybe that's why a lot of players don't play like Connor Clattenburg, because it takes a massive toll.
Well, you know what young men like that have to learn is they have to learn that they have to pick their spots. Not everybody wants to hear that, but you can't play if you're injured.
Indeed. Final thoughts, Kurt? Anything else you'd like to add?
It was 2 points. I'll take it, but I'm still not satisfied with how this team is playing. They haven't put it all together yet. We'll see what Nashville brings tomorrow night.
They've finally again clawed their way back to real 500. 23 wins in 46 games. I hope, like, it would be so nice to get, I don't know if they've ever been above that yet this year, like maybe in the first 2 days or so, the first week of the season. But other than that, I'm like, they've clawed their way to real 500 a few times in the last month, but I don't think they've been above it. Maybe they have. I'm not sure.
Well, when you can't win 3 games in a row, that's kind of hard to achieve, isn't it?
Indeed. Kurt, thanks for talking.
It was a pleasure. Thanks, Dave.
And thanks to the listeners of the Cult of Hockey and the readers of the Cult of Hockey, and to Edmonton Oilers fans everywhere, the smartest, wisest, sanest hockey fans in the entire world. I'm convinced of that. And in the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.